Thank you for pressing start on episode 76 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcasts. Today, we have 2 secret games followed by a review of our featured game, Octodad, Dadliest Catch. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds, the games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bo Po, but it's not only me. There's a guy with a flow who's on a journey. So won't you put your hands together, please, for the Zeo Drifter, the indie game sifter, the curse-cracking mister, DiscoCola. What is going on? I'm doing just fine. My left-sided, completely human body. Those are references to our featured game, Octodad, Dadliest Catch, which is our season's co-op game.
Yeah. We starting in like season 4 or 5, we started playing a co-op game every season. And so we've played the likes of Castle Crashers. We've played Cuphead. We played
Operation Tango.
Yes, and separate from the planned co-op experience, we also started with A Way Out and It Takes Two.
Oh, yes.
That was separate from that specific plan.
Wow, that was so long ago. That feels like a generation ago for our podcast.
I had 1 kid when we did that.
That's wild. That's wild. Well, also, this is the last normal episode of season 7. So we have our co-op game here in episode 10 of the season. Do you want to talk a little bit about what happens the next episode?
Yeah, so in the next episode, every season we have 10 regular episodes, and that 11th episode we dedicate to looking back at our season. We recap it, we review it, we give out awards based on like what our favorite games were, favorite sound design, favorite narrative, just a lot of different topics. We have something we call jealous games. So by the end of today, Bopo and I will be able to decide what our jealous game is, because this is the last time we do a secret game.
Yes.
And then at the end of the episode, we go back and forth picking games for the upcoming season. So the next time you hear us on episode 77, we will be planning all of our games for season 8 of Underplayed.
Wow. And season 8 will take place in the last half of 2025. That's when we will produce and release the season. It will take place over about 6 months, just like this season has taken place.
Yep. I marked on the calendar what all the release days are
last
week.
Nice. Yeah, that's good to know about in advance. And then we have something to talk about with KZUM, where we produce this show, too.
Yes, this is KZUM's Indie Video Game Podcast, but KZUM's kind of a special place. As the name implies, it is a radio station, but it is a non-profit radio station. So think of your NPRs and your PBS. KZUM works on a similar model where we do get some support from grants and some support from federal funding, but the largest portion of our support comes from listener donations. And because listeners have supported KZUM for over 47 years, 48 actually, I've lost the math, but KZUM's been here for a long time, and that's a lot due to listener support. And without KZUM, Underplayed would very likely not be here. We would have to have invested in all of the studio equipment ourselves. And I don't know that we have been in the position to do that. So it's with great gratitude to KZUM from us that we get to be here. And we hope that if you appreciate Underplayed, that by the transitive property extends to KZUM. And that if you do have extra funds, I know that not everybody does. I usually don't myself. But if you do have any extra funds that you could throw KZUM's way, we'd appreciate it. You can donate at kzum.org. If you're listening to this the week this episode releases, we will be at the tail end of our May Fund Drive. We do that 3 times a year. We just dedicate that time to asking for donations. So Underplayed's doing our part as well. We want to contribute to that flourishing of public radio.
Yes, and this is the kind of thing where even just $5, $10 goes a long way. If 100 people did that, that would be huge.
Yeah.
A lot of people assume, oh, I bet just a handful of really rich people will give the station money. That's not how it works. That's usually not what happens.
Doesn't happen around here. We do get some
there are
very
some generous
people,
donors, but they are pretty few in comparison to the large pool of donors that we have. So if you want to be part of that, if you want to show your support for KZUM as a way of thanking KZUM for allowing us to do this show and allowing other podcasters to do shows and for allowing live programmers to do radio shows all throughout the week that have all kinds of programming that is entertaining and educational and beneficial for the community, you can, again, go to kzum.org and are we using the word pledge still? Do we say pledge?
No, just say donate.
Donate.
And especially during the month of May, that's the time to do it because there is a local organization that matches funds for all of the nonprofits that participate in our city, and KZUM is among them. So a donation that you make is actually a little bit bigger than the donation that you make, thanks to that matching funds pool.
That's always so exciting. And this is the middle fund drive week of the year. There's one in February around KZUM's birthday, and then there's one later in the fall.
Yeah, in September.
And so this is right in the middle of the year. So if you want to help give KZUM some momentum going into the back half of the year, now is the time. There's another thing I wanted to talk about, Disco, and it is that I finally did right by One Shot World Machine Edition.
Oh, good.
In that I played through the Solstice playthrough, finally. This is the thing that I talked about in the episode as not realizing was a whole playthrough that was significantly different than the base game. And so I felt completely remiss and embarrassed in that moment. And I felt like people had to take my review with a grain of salt just because I hadn't seen everything this game had to offer. I do think the Solstice playthrough is still technically considered to be an expansion or a content update of some kind.
After looking up on howlongtobeat.com, which is a great resource and tool for planning your gaming habit,
it is.
I believe the Solstice something or other was a separate entry.
Its own thing.
On that website.
Right, yeah. And I think the soundtracks for the base game and the Solstice expansion, they're separate when you see those on streaming platforms. So I nonetheless believe that this is very worth your time, and I think it's part of getting that full one-shot experience. I did this in one sitting. Like you said, it's really short. I think you said it was an hour or two.
Yeah.
And it flew by. I largely found the characters to be more interesting. You know, I remembered everybody from the base game. They have some really good moments. And I also enjoyed the soundtrack, I think, a little bit more in the Solstice playthrough.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had overall a pretty good time. I don't think I would change my score at this point, but I'm super glad I played this, and I feel like it ended on a better note for me than the base game. So you do have to play through the base game to get to it. And I wish I had just been more curious after that first playthrough. But
yeah, I can't imagine the game without it because it did make such a big difference for me. Because I just, that first playthrough was fine. It was fine. But it's that second playthrough that really grabbed me, that made me care about more of the characters.
Yeah, a lot. I think that's really where it comes home. And yeah, it definitely becomes a two-shot, not a one-shot situation. And I'm glad I got to see it. So just wanted to, put that on the record that yes, I now have played it, and it was worth my time. It was definitely worth my time.
Did that playthrough include a platinum trophy?
No, it did not. Are you able to pick up missing wallpapers and character bios in the second playthrough if you missed them the first time? Because you don't get all of the same moments happening.
Yeah, there will be some that won't be accessible, but
I definitely looked out for one that I knew I missed. It was the Vine Girl.
Yeah.
I missed her bio in the base game, and right in the spot where it should show up.
If you didn't see it, then it probably doesn't happen.
Yeah,
okay.
It doesn't happen. So I think that's a whole other playthrough. But I know you got the platinum in that game. Did we talk about that on this show?
I think so, yeah.
We did? Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if I'll do that anytime soon, but I think it's just all about collection. So I think that's about all. Anything else you wanted to say at the start?
There's a special DLC that came out today, and I forgot until I logged on to Bluesky, and I was like, oh no, it came out today, and I was going to try and log on and play it before the show, but I ran out of time.
Sea of Stars?
Year of the Crab.
Oh, that's already out.
Yeah, it's out today.
Oh.
We don't have to keep this in.
That's exciting. No, I kind of want to keep it. That's really cool. Yeah, that was one of those timely things. Oh, and did we talk about Katana Zero?
No, we
messaged about it. I don't think so.
We didn't because
that happened after we talked about Year of the Crab.
Yeah, I was so confused for a minute. I was like, yeah, totally, because we said we manifest, but that was something else. We manifested something different.
So earlier this season, this is wild. Earlier this season, we had Noah Lone, aka Some Humble Onion, on to help us review Katana Zero, and we talked about this content update, this DLC that's been years in the making for Katana Zero.
Which was news to me. I had no idea when when we started the episode.
It had been announced, years before. But the trail went cold on any updates on this thing. And we told Noah, well, look what will happen. We'll do this episode, and then within a few months, it'll get released, or we'll see something about it. We actually did see something about it, I think in the Triple I showcase very recently. And it's just a reconfirmation that it is being worked on. Yeah. So it doesn't have a date, so it's not as exciting, but hellers. Yeah. I like to think that we made that happen.
They showed a lot, so I mean...
They did show a lot.
Yeah.
It looks like it's, They showed more than Silksong, which is allegedly coming in 2025 now. I know. I had a conversation, by the way. We both went to an event today, and I had a conversation with somebody about Hollow Knight for like 20 minutes. And we talked about Silksong, and I was like, it's coming out this year. Did you hear? And he goes, no, they've been saying that every year for the best. And I was like, but it's different this time. And he didn't believe me.
I don't think it's different this time. I'm not with you on this one.
You don't think so? Dang. I just feel like 2025 they've uttered that year, I feel. Okay, well, anyway, those were some good updates. We're going to keep going. Everybody, if you want to support us, there are two very easy ways to do that. One is you could give us a follow and a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. That would ensure that we stay in your feed and always available to you. If you're on a podcast service that has a rating system like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can give us 5 stars. We would really appreciate that. And also, if you have a friend who likes indie games, we always appreciate people sharing our podcast. It is time now for our secret games.
Secret games. Secret games. Secret games. Secret games.
In Secret Games, we each review an indie game we've been playing in secret since our last episode. We don't talk about what we're playing and picking. We keep them a surprise for this very moment. Why are they a surprise? Just to have fun.
It's fun. I'm
fun.
having fun.
Any indie game can be chosen as long as we haven't reviewed it before on the show. So it's a pretty wide open field of options. We'll start with you, DiscoCola. Let the mystery be no more. Reveal your secret game for episode 76 of Underplayed.
Today's secret game is synergizing on the co-op aspect. I haven't always talked about it this season, but I've done a pretty good job with the synergies for the most part.
Yes, you have.
My secret game is also a game that you name dropped once on Underplayed back in episode 59 when we reviewed Ovivo. My secret game comes from Sparpweed, and it is called Ibb and Obb.
Oh, amazing. Yes.
And I sent you a really great trailer. I sent you the Nintendo Switch release trailer, and I want you to pay close attention to it because it shows players playing Ibb and Obb.
Ooh, love that.
And that is like I relate hardcore to what those faces are doing. So if you, the listener,
Okay.
want to check out what pretty much any ibb obb player is going through, that trailer does a great job.
Nintendo is known for this. When they show off a co-op or multiplayer game, they're going to show you people's faces. They're going to show people's reactions. With the Switch 2, they're showing off the new camera attachment and people's faces composited with the gameplay, and they're just going to show that togetherness. And so, yeah, you got to look up the ibb obb Switch release trailer. So when you played this, you knew this was going to be your secret game for this episode.
Correct. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily always going to be ibb obb. Kate and I had planned for a long time that we were going to play a co-op game together, you know, in God, when did we? Spring break, I think. But yeah, it just ended up being ibb obb based on cross-platform preferences, which actually didn't end up working. We both had to shout out to Kate because she bought the game twice so that we could play it on Switch.
Well, now someone has to play it with Kate on Steam.
Yeah, there
is
you
what
go.
that means.
Yeah.
So sorry, Kate.
give Emily a call.
There you go.
Anyways, like I said, I played this with Cater Blossom from No Small Games. Go check out our friends at No Small Games wherever you get your podcasts. The plot of ibb obb is pretty nebulous. It might not even actually exist. You play as Ib and Obb. Ib is the short green one, and Obb is the tall pink one.
And you played as?
I played as Obb.
Okay, the tall pink one.
Yes. And you trade places in opposite gravities to overcome high platforms or to dispel harmful adversaries by popping their little life orb. All of this in order to reach the end of the level. Ibb obb is split into something like 6 worlds, and I'm calling them worlds is pretty generous. Each world is split into 3 levels, but this is all very loose though, because there's not really, at least not that I could notice, like consistent themes or designs that tie the 3 levels of a world together. It's just for me, it was more just a useful tool to calculate the remaining game length.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, you will notice that there are 18 overall levels split into 6 worlds, so to speak. And then in this game, as far as controls are concerned, you can move left or right, and you can jump. And that's really it. You do have, at least on the Switch version, have the option to draw either using the touchscreen in handheld mode or using your R stick. And this is useful if you're playing with a stranger or someone who is not in the same room as you. I don't recommend playing with a stranger. Just putting that out there right now. Don't play this with a stranger.
I don't think I've ever gone through a whole co-op game with a complete rando. You know, that I've met people in online games and then decided to squat up with just them before. But yeah, that would be a dice roll I wouldn't want to even
That would be
throw.
rough. Yeah, and the option exists. You can create a party and wait for someone to join you.
Interesting. So you can draw on the screen to indicate things like, hey, you should go here.
Yep.
And maybe as you're talking to them over Discord or something, you're circling something for them to see.
Exactly. Yes. And so that is, once we discovered that was an option about a third of the way through, that is something that we utilized a lot. But anyways, using all those controls, you will encounter the aforementioned adversaries. These will mostly take the form of spiky ball creatures or half circles. There's also eventually these bat-like looking enemies. And each of these adversaries can be defeated by traveling to the opposite side of their gravity and popping their respective orb. And once popped, that orb turns into some form of collectible that will affect your score at the end of the level. And I guess I should mention that there are opposite gravities in this game.
Yeah, there's always a platform with 2 sides going on in this game.
And so when you are on the top part of the platform, you're obviously like in what we would consider the right side up world, but you can also jump through holes in the platform that are specifically designated. And like after you jump through that hole, you are in the opposite platform. You are upside down from our perspective.
Yeah. And even the upside down gravity side of things has a different environment. It has like an inverted version of the normal gravity's environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the main mechanic. I should point that out. But moving on from the harmful adversaries, there will also be different kinds of platforming elements that will change how you have to approach puzzles. The most prominent platforming changes come from like trampoline style pieces of platform or bubbles that will cause you to float through them as long as you're holding the jump button. And when you get to these sections of the game is more so about solving puzzles using momentum. And so momentum puzzles become a big part of the game eventually. But that really covers a lot of it, unless you think I'm missing something, because you have played this game before.
I have played it. That's good context here. I've played this. I tried playing it with my wife. I think we tried playing it back before we were married.
Oh, wow.
So it's been years,
Yeah.
many years. And I don't remember how far we got. I wonder if I could look on Steam and see my achievements and use that as a clue. But we did not finish. And we got to a point where it was just challenging enough that we wanted to put the game down, and then we never went back to it. So it's not like we rage quit, but it was like we were in a play session for a while. It was time to take a break, and then we never returned on any day after that. So yeah, I've not seen the end of this game, but I did get to see a couple moments of you streaming it. You happened to stream it when I was streaming, actually, but I did manage to see a couple moments.
Right. Well, from there, I guess I will move on to what I consider the highlights of ibb and obb. First, I'll mention that I had a blast playing with Kate. We were having fun. We were singing. We were swearing. We were taking failures on the chin.
You were swearing.
Oh, did a little bit of that. But yeah, in this case, it's not really hyperbole to say that I probably could not have finished the game without her. So, great time, great ibb and obb partner, and I really appreciate that. The overall art direction is incredibly attractive. There's a lot of contrast. There's a lot of really bold colors, strong and simple shapes, and it's so streamlined, yet so detailed with such organic looking backgrounds. I really love how this game looks.
Yeah. If I can make a couple comparisons, this game reminds me of another side-scrolling, I guess kind of puzzle game, but it's single player called Hohokum.
Okay, you've mentioned Hohokum before.
Hohokum kind of reminds me of this. And then also Pixel Junk Eden, kind of, but this definitely has more colors going on than Pixel Junk Eden.
And when you talk about Pixel Junk Eden, I think of the game Euphoria.
Oh, yeah.
Which also has fewer colors than this, but it does kind of have that like bold
flora.
Contrast and yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the overall art direction, just like very, very solid. And then additionally, the music and overall sound design is superb. I think the sound of enemy orbs popping, the sound of little crystals falling to the ground, the sound of ibb and obb popping should you die, all awesome. And then the music is just really great. It's very good. The physics feel mostly pretty good, but especially I really love the jumping arc. You get this sense of where you're going to land the moment you jump. It's hard to explain in words, but have you ever watched those cartoons? I've watched a ton of them where this character is maybe learning to use a sword or maybe learning to draw, and their teacher always says, like, treat it like an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
And I've always, like, found that line to be, one, annoying because it's so cliche, but two, I've never really been able to relate to that concept with anything. But this jump in ibb and obb is so good. I kind of get it now. It's like, as soon as I jump, I know exactly where I'm going to go. I know exactly how it's going to feel when I get there. And I kind of know exactly the momentum I'm going to get if I jump through the little gravity well.
Ooh, nice.
So it's a really great jump with some pretty good physics. I think the game design is classic. This is just a video game-ass puzzle platforming video game. That's that simple. I think everything is cute. Ibb and obb, the enemies, the little ball dudes that you encounter, the guys that are dancing at the end of the level, everyone just rules. And again, the designs for everything are so simple, but so effective at being cute. And then lastly, one of my favorite things about this game is the relief of finishing the game. And the reason for that is in my next section. One of the things that I don't love so much about this game is how hard it gets.
It gets so hard.
It gets crazy stinking hard.
It's a pretty distant memory for me by now because this was maybe approaching a decade ago that I played, right? But the thing that I remember, the thing that I will never forget is that it gets hard.
It gets super hard, you know. Like we mentioned earlier, you played this game and I was looking for a co-op game to play with Kate. And I remembered that you name dropped this. And I also had learned that you played it. But when I started, I didn't know that you hadn't finished it. I just assumed that you had. And you told me, oh, yeah, it got hard. We kind of quit. And so I might not have started if I had that piece of information at the start.
But yeah, heckin' finished
We
it.
finished it, but I almost quit a couple times.
I'm going to try to look up the game on Steam and see if it has achievements. Maybe it'll tell me what chapter I finished at.
Okay.
While you continue to talk, I'll try to figure this out.
While I said that I do love the art direction because of its simplicity, there would be times where background or foreground elements would appear as if they were intended to be part of the puzzle, or conversely, certain puzzle elements would seem as if they were background dressing. And this is especially true with like the little floaty bubbles that I mentioned earlier that will pull you up and up as long as you hold jump. Sometimes those just look like clouds in the background and you can't actually jump up to them, but no, they are a crucial part of the puzzle. Some puzzle solutions rely on luck a little bit. There's something we mentioned in the Super Meat Boy episode of Underplayed. Most of the puzzles are built around an incredible flow. If you just run and jump at all the right times, all of the moving pieces will time out just right. But some of the puzzles, that just isn't the case. And so when those elements behave different between attempts, it stands out even more.
And then it's hard to get the practice you need to pass.
Yep. And the puzzles that have those more random elements tend to also have just a higher difficulty anyways. So these two things can make certain situations feel super impossible. And like I said, there were probably 2 or 3 times where I legitimately would have embraced quitting, but luckily Kate kept us on the road to persistence, and we did reach the end of the game. But not without looking up 4 or 5 solutions.
Oh, okay.
Confirming in a few cases that we just needed better luck or skill. And I also want to add here that Kate and I got stuck on basically all of the same parts as the people in the walkthrough I was following. So that was a bit comforting as well.
That's validating, for sure.
Also, as I was looking up these walkthroughs, I've noticed that there are differences between the Switch version and previous versions.
Oh.
So there would be puzzles in the video guide that we never encountered. Some puzzles were different in different spots, I think, but some puzzles were easier on the Switch version. Some sections were harder. Specifically, I think the last stretch of the game looks a lot harder on the Switch than it does in previous versions. But Switch versions is the only one I've played. I just know that there are differences.
Interesting. Huh.
And then my last critique is just kind of a lack of substance. Like, I still believe very strongly that a game can just be a game. Most of my favorite games don't need a complicated or straightforward narrative. But because of what I mentioned earlier about everyone being so cute, I'm rooting for Ib and Ob, but I don't know why I am. I just think they're cute. So I want to know a little bit more. Not much, but a little bit.
Fair.
So at the end of the day, Ib and Ob is a bit of a novel puzzle platformer experience with strong, classic game design elements. The art direction and sound design are incredible, efficient, and streamlined. I never got tired of looking at the game. I was stoked to have a chance to play this with Kate, and I had a great time doing so. And I think without that setup, I may have quit well before the end of the game, because this game gets challenging. So in the end, largely due to difficulty, I placed this as an 8.0 out of 10.
Nice. Awesome. I think back in the day, if I had to give it a score, I might not give it quite that high of a score, but it'd be up there in like maybe the 7 or 7.5 for me. And I just looked, I have almost 5 hours logged in this game. So I think we made it decently far. And then it doesn't give you an achievement for finishing every level or every group of levels. You get achievements for more miscellaneous things. So I
Yeah.
only have 2 achievements. They're for finding a hidden crystal and then for finishing a level without dying, which I think are pretty common. So
Yeah.
I don't
Ivanov
know
has-
how far we got.
They have worlds with a very lowercase w. It's, very much just a very arbitrary distinction.
And my wife doesn't play these games. You know, she doesn't play platforming puzzle games. In the rare time that she does play a game, it's going to be something like Animal Crossing New Horizons, maybe a shorter narrative-based game on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
So this was new territory back when we played it, and she did give it a very good shot. And we both just decided to put it down at the same time. We're like, this is good.
Yeah.
And then we never went back to it. So now I'm curious, what did Kate think of ibb obb?
Well, I'm glad you asked because she actually sent me some notes. So I'm going to read this verbatim, pretend I am Kate for just a few moments.
Okay.
Quote, I think my big takeaway is that it was probably one of the most challenging games I've ever played. And I actually wouldn't recommend that just any 2 people play the game together. I feel like being an amazing team and both people having some gaming experience is pretty much required in order to have a fun time with the game, and also necessary if you want to progress. I actually thought about what it would be like to play this game with other people in my life, and I'm not sure I could have completed it with them. I'm impressed at how smooth the co-op play was on the Switch. The features baked in, like drawing to communicate or explain how an idea could be executed, was fun and helpful, but again, only if you're already vibing and playing next to each other IRL or on a voice call. I like how at first you think that ibb and obb have the exact same abilities, but as you go deeper, you realize that only one of them can do XYZ, while the other has to do this other thing. Ibb and obb managed to convey quite a bit of personality despite only being 2 little guys with eyes. But it's fun to think about how much of yourself and the other person you're playing has an impact on how you're perceiving the characters. After a while, I was like, that's not obb. That's a digital manifestation of my best friend DiscoCola.
Oh.
Not much to say about the music since I couldn't hear it, but completing a level together feels amazing and like a huge win. I like how one person can't really carry the other. The game is designed in a way where you both have to use brains, but also quick reaction time and gamer TM abilities. Visually, it's pretty delightful. Who doesn't love pink and green together? End quote.
That's so, all of that is so accurate and valid. And that's a good observation that one person can't carry the other person. So both people have to be on.
Yep.
They have to be ready to play a heckin' video game that's kind of hard. And if just one person isn't quite in the mood, then it's not quite ibb and obb time, isn't it?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, there will be like doorways that only obb can go through. And so maybe that puzzle will have ibb giving you like a boost and obb's doing like a lot of the work. But just a couple puzzles down the road, the role's going to be reversed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I don't have any questions about that, but I did want to say good job to ibb and obb.
Thank you, ibb and obb, for getting to the end. No, that the last like 2 levels specifically were just like very rough.
Oof, yeah, I think I pulled up your VOD, I think, and I saw you kind of grinding a little bit.
It got rough at the end, but we did it.
And where can you play ibb and obb?
You can play ibb and obb from Sparkweed Games on Linux, PC, PlayStation 3, Nintendo Switch, and some of the versions are cross-compatible, but the Switch version I don't think is.
Okay, wonderful. It's time for my secret game. My secret game also has a little bit of synergy with today's featured game, but not in that it's a co-op game, in that it's a short game.
Okay.
And it's one that you're familiar with. It's one that you've seen
I thought you were
in
going
action.
Tell me that it was about an octopus.
Oh, that would be cool. I can't think of an octopus being in this game, but my secret game is miniatures.
Oh, I do know this one. Kind of. I saw moments of it.
So I played it last year. I have now replayed it for this episode. So
Okay.
I played it just the other night, so it's fresh in my mind. So Miniatures is a 2024 adventure anthology of short stories, I guess, is how I would really quickly pitch it. It was developed and published by Other Tales Interactive. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, Miniatures is a collection of strange tales where childhood imagination and reality merge with darker undercurrents of mystery and magic. Explore a vast seascape, build odd furniture, feed a lizard, and play with sand castles, end quote. So yeah, I played this back when it came out last year, late last year. I got a key to this from Neon Hive. So thank you, Neon Hive, for the key to Miniatures. I streamed the whole thing. It was very short. I was not streaming it for very long because this is a series of 4 short adventures that add up to less than an hour of playtime.
Less than an hour.
In fact, it might be closer to 45, 50 minutes, and that might even be if you're taking your time a little bit. So this is a brief game. And it has a hand-illustrated visual style like you'd see in storybooks. When you start it, you open this box on a table that contains 4 objects. There's a lizard, there's a shell, a moth, and a screwdriver. And clicking on any of them begins its respective story. So you can choose to play these stories in any order you want. And these stories mostly involve clicking and dragging on the part of the player. And each story has to do with childhood perspectives, and they're told with a bit of a supernatural style. They can tend to feel like fables. They can be quite abstract, but they're about everyday things and everyday situations too. And they convey emotions and intangible qualities of thought, especially from the perspective of a kid. So I'll quickly pitch the 4 stories. There's Paludarium, which is the lizard. In this one, a child is left alone in their home to care for a lizard. There's the last sandcastle, which is the shell. And this is where small creatures of a sandcastle village create music together. There's the House of the Moon, which is the moth. This is where a child goes searching for their mother who ran off with the moon. And then there's Familiar, which is the screwdriver. And this is where a family builds a cabinet and unleashes something dark. So that's the setup for the game. Very simple. I don't want to say more than that because I feel like this is an experience sort of game. Like this game's an experience. You got to play it to really understand what's going on, I think. But the trailer does a good job at showing you the vibe. And what I liked about Miniatures is that it feels like an exhibition. It feels sort of like this showpiece of unfettered creativity. And there are these nuanced concepts that are brought to life so carefully. This game captured my attention through the way that it contemplates. And I feel like it made me contemplate about what its stories might mean. And it's contemplation that also doesn't always seemingly arrive at a destination. It sort of feels like a vibe, a mood piece at times. I think there are takeaways. I think there are messages in this game, but sometimes it's a little mysterious. And I kind of respect that it has the balance.
I watched a good amount of it when you streamed it, and there were messages that I could tell were there, but I couldn't grasp them.
Yeah. And I think replaying the game as I have now done, I think you can maybe grasp new takeaways sometimes. But more than anything, I think this is a solemn and slow and introspective series of storytelling. And these vignettes invite me to think about topics that are unspoken. And so I think some of the game is evoking feelings of loss. Some of it is about conflict. Some of it might be about neglect. And depending on what you've observed in the world or experienced yourself, you might come away with different takeaways. I love the sound design in this game. This is not a soundtrack that you'll come away wanting to blast in your car as you're driving around. It's ambient. It's very mildly haunting. This game gets under your skin, and I think it does a lot of that through the sound design and the way the sound design corresponds with what happens on screen. As an example, in the short story Familiar, that story uses hard cuts to black a lot before cutting back to a new scene. and there will be a little musical cue that accompanies that cut to black. And I think that just those two together, the sound and visuals, do a lot. Each vignette has a particular style too. The House of the Moon feels like you're scrolling along a children's storybook that's been removed from its binding. Like it feels like all these pages have been removed from a book and spread out, and you're scrolling along them. Paludarium uses color to convey the passage of time. It uses these really cool colors, but then for another moment, it uses warmer colors to show that you're in a different time period. And I think that's just so clever. I love the iconic imagery in this game. There are images from this game where when I think of miniatures, I think of some of these pictures in my mind. I think of a child holding up a snail and that same child looking at their reflection in the water. I think of the hands and feet of a family that tell us a lot about who they are without ever speaking words to us. I think about something in this game that is ravaged in an instant. There's a moment in this game where something gets completely destroyed. And I remember the first time I experienced that, my jaw hit the floor. And again, it was completely wordless. And I think that's so powerful that this game makes me feel that way, given that it's not even speaking to me a lot of the time. There is a little bit of VO in some of the stories, but a lot of the time it's completely wordless. I did have some things that I didn't like as much about this game. One of them is just that it's really dang short and I want more. And that's a backdoor compliment, right? Because I want to stay in this world, and it does kind of get its hooks in me after a few stories, and I just want to keep experiencing these stories, but then it's over and I feel like I just want more. And then also there's not a ton of interactivity. So while I'm drawn in, sometimes it can feel like it's a bit more passive than I would have liked in moments. But overall, Miniatures is a game that contemplates, and for 45 minutes or so, it asks you to contemplate too. It's about children's stories without being stories for children. Rather, because everyone who plays it has been a child themselves, I think each person will take away different things from each story. So I do recommend this to everyone. For me, just because this is so well done, so artful, so memorable, but also because I'm not sure how replayable it is. I don't know, when something is less than an hour, there's only so much it can do to make a profound impression on you. But I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10.
That's what I guessed.
And it's playable on PC, which is the version I played, Mac, Linux, Switch, and iOS.
So looking at this trailer again, reminding myself of what I saw, I'm seeing so many different art styles in the different stories. So you have the Last Sandcastle, right?
Yep.
And when I watched that, all I could think of was an Amanita game.
Oh, yes. It has a bunch of little guys.
And they kind of do their little loop when you click on them, and then you have to figure out the right thing to do to make them, do something new.
And that's actually the only one I can think of where we don't see a child. We are possibly seeing something from a child's point of view or through their imagination, more likely. And I think that's a powerful contrast between the other stories where we actually see physically a kid involved in the story. Here, we're looking through the gaze of a kid, I think.
Okay. And then the one about the lizard, that one, not as much in the art style, but kind of reminds me of how I felt playing Kentucky Route Zero at times.
Yes, definitely.
And I had a comparison for the one about the cabinet, building the cabinet, but that one for me was the most affecting because I had a similar kind of experience as a child, and arguably something dark opened,
Yeah. For me, what I take away from that one is that all of us might have darkness within us, and sometimes we can't keep that inside.
Yeah. Well, and it's easy for those things to come to the surface in frustrating situations.
Yeah.
Which is what I experienced as a child. We were in a situation that became frustrating, and I observed conflict in my family.
I think it's also how we can associate memories with objects in a way where, let's say you're building something with somebody and you have a fight about it. You might have a perfectly pleasant time for most of the time you're building that thing. But when the thing is built and you look at it, you might think about the happiness and the joy, the ease of doing it with them. You might also remember the conflicts that you had. Those memories will always be attached to that thing when you look at it. At least for me, I think about that stuff.
I'm reliving it in my head right now. So it can be powerful when you see something you don't expect like that.
And then especially as a kid where you're so impressionable and you're forming a lot of your earliest memories in real time.
Yeah.
And it happens in the mundane moments sometimes. So another thing about the lizard one, going back to that one ends kind of suddenly, and I had to go back and watch just the ending of that story to try to figure out what was going on. I mean, that one might be the most open to interpretation for me. And I think that one is super thought-provoking. It's hard to pick a favorite one, but I think the lizard and the House of the Moon might be tied for my favorites. They're all great, though. They're all great.
I don't have a question. The game ends when you do all four. Is that right?
It does end, yeah. And there's even something with the level selection that happens that really closes the book on everything. That lets you know that you're done with this.
Yeah.
And credits do scroll and everything, but there's a nice conclusion to the package that I appreciate.
Cool. Yeah, like you said, when the game's so short, it's so hard to expound on it to a certain degree.
That's why I didn't have a ton to say.
Plateau.
Exactly. Yeah. So pretty straightforward, but I do recommend this. I had talked about this maybe a couple seasons ago as a game that I was really looking forward to, I think. And so this was one of my most anticipated games of last year, and now I'm replaying it. Had a great time, and I recommend it to all of y'all out there. So those are our secret games, ibb and obb, and miniatures. Let's move on to our review of Octodad Dadliest Catch. It is our featured game. So Octodad Dadliest Catch is an adventure game first released in 2014. It was developed and published by Young Horses. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, Octodad Dadliest Catch is a game about destruction, deception, and fatherhood. The player controls Octodad, a dapper octopus masquerading as a human as he goes about his life. Octodad's existence is a constant struggle as he must master mundane tasks with his unwieldy, boneless tentacles.
I have a surprise for the whole family. A free trip to the aquarium!
Who's that man with the three-piece suit?
These games are for children!
To the car, kids!
Who's that man with the 8 strong legs?
What are you doing?
Tried to make me breakfast, but it broke my eggs. Octodad. Nobody suspects a thing.
How did you beat me?
Octodad.
I like that boneless was a necessary adjective there.
I know, they're boneless tentacles, just to be clear, because we know you had the question. So we know about Octodad. He's the main character of this game. He's who you play as. He doesn't speak English. He does can you give a demonstration? It's very, very good.
Thank you.
It's very good.
It's in my vocal range.
I know, but it's also like you went back to the game and you listened to it just to be able to do that better. I have a suspicion that you did that.
I actually didn't.
You didn't.
No.
You're just that good. DiscoCola is that good at it. Well, there are some other characters. We have Octodad's wife, Scarlett. We have their daughter, Stacy, and we have their son, Tommy. I believe Tommy is the older kid. Stacy's the younger one. There's also Chef Fujimoto, who is in pursuit of Octodad and knows his secret that he's an octopus. He's the only one who knows that he's an octopus.
I don't know if he knows. Like, he is confident, but I don't think it's like
it's kind of like the chef or the guy in Ratatouille.
Yeah.
Who he's like onto it, but doesn't know 100%
this
what's
trope
going on.
exists in a lot. There's one in Sonic, in the first Sonic movie. Yeah. You got those guys all over the place.
So Chef Fujimoto is very suspicious of Octodad's true nature and is chasing him around, trying to track him down. And we have to sometimes avoid Chef Fujimoto. And how this game opens is actually with a wedding. It's with Octodad getting married to Scarlet. He is not suspected as being an octopus. Someone walks in and gasps, and they're not gasping because they see an octopus. They're gasping because they see someone who isn't dressed for the ceremony yet. And so we go through getting dressed for the wedding. We have the wedding ceremony as a first chapter. Then we live a life in the suburban home of this family.
Domestic bliss. Well, domestic contentment.
Yeah, that's probably a good term for it. An everyday scenario with this family. Maybe sans the the chef coming into the scene at the end there. But then after that, we go to a grocery store. We also have an extensive series of levels where we go to an aquarium. Mm-hmm. That's where most of the game takes place. And along the way, we are hanging out with our family. And then we're also being pursued by the chef. So that's what I would say to set up the story and the setting.
Yeah, as for controls, each arm and each leg are controlled separately, which is basically the brand of the game. Our arms additionally will be able to hold onto, suction onto certain interactable items, and you use the same principle to throw objects as well. As I recall, both arms can be controlled at the same time, though I don't know exactly how that works with single player because arms, when playing on a controller, are controlled with one of the sticks and a leg is controlled with the other stick.
Yeah. So I was going to talk about this in a moment. Do you want me to jump ahead to
Go
where
for it, please.
Okay. So I did try this in single player because I wanted to be able to compare it a little bit. There are 2 bonus scenario episodes. I don't know if you know about these, but you can select them from the main menu of the game. And I played the first one where it is Scarlet and Octodad on their first fancy date. Mm. And it's actually a pretty long level. Like it took me about 20 minutes to play. You go on a date at a fancy restaurant. You get roped into doing some of the cooking and some of the dishes and things. Oh. You have to serve other customers, but you also have to revisit your table with Scarlet and eat a several course meal with her. So there's a lot to balance and juggle in this level.
Octodad sitcom.
Yes. And the chef is in this level.
Right.
He works at the restaurant. So Imagine it's perfect.
That. Yeah.
And so playing this, what I could tell is that you can move both legs. You can only move one arm in single player. That's all I could figure out. I don't think there are 2 arms you can control. At least in this bonus episode, that's how it worked.
You know, that does kind of track. I seem to remember when we were deciding which arm and which leg to be co-op, that there would be times when one option was grayed out. And that might be what was going on there.
That might be, yeah. So there are, on average, more limbs to control when you're playing single player, but one less arm than between both players, if that makes sense.
So both arms can be controlled in co-op at the same time in co-op mode, though, and I imagine in single player mode, you can only control one leg simultaneously. And at the time when we were playing the game, I didn't really understand why it was different, but then I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh, you're on land, you have to stand up somehow. Yeah. So like that is why only one leg at a time.
Right.
So if you're smarter than me, you were quick to the jump on that, but it took me a while to understand.
It took me a while too. And that's definitely also how the single player works.
Okay. As for other mechanics, you have what probably has a name, but I call it the suspicion meter. Right. Basically, if you behave inhuman or if you fumble too much, your suspicion meter will fill up and you will be found out. This suspicion meter also fills up if you become damaged.
Yeah,
is
there are
how I'll
levels
say
where you
that.
can get hurt,
Yeah.
and that is basically doubles as your health.
Yeah. So the goal of the game is to do all your tasks, control your limbs, but also,
Because humans never get hurt.
Right.
That's how the suspicion meter works, I guess.
So avoid being found out. And then you complete the game by completing a series of tasks on a checklist in each level. And that's Octodad Dadliest Catch, baby.
And it is the follow-up to Octodad, which is a 2010 game developed by students at DePaul University. Did you know that this is actually a sequel?
I did know that. Our friend Emily, also from No Small Games, did an episode of the Fun and Games podcast Side Quests, which is another great podcast.
It's a great podcast, yeah.
So you can check out A Specific Eggs
Octodad
podcast
episode
on the Fun and Games podcast about Octodad Dadliest Catch, where she also talks about Octodad.
Yes.
Did you follow all that, listener?
I think all that made sense.
I grabbed all of the different pieces with all the tentacles, the boneless tentacles. We got it.
The boneless tentacles.
We got the pieces in the right order.
And so these students from DePaul University who made Octodad, some of them would go on to form Young Horses and create Deadliest Catch, the sequel, which is really cool. I love that basically 4 years or so before Dadliest Catch came out, they created this proof of concept, maybe. I mean, it was its own game, but it feels pretty prototypish and experimental. I did give this a try the other night.
Nice. How was it?
Wanted to also have this under my belt as something to compare it to. It was kind of rough when it comes to controlling. I will say the heart is there. The ideas are there. You even see the same living room from Dadliest Catch. It's in here. You interact with Stacy and Tommy. I didn't finish it. It's only like an hour long. I had to give it up because it was just kind of driving me a little insane with its controls. But
you
I
got
think
the gist of it.
But I think the chef is in it. I did get the gist of it. And it is only controlled with your mouse. And how it works.
Oh, that sounds rough.
I'm going to try to explain this now. How it works is you click and drag with your left mouse button to move your left leg. You click and drag with your right mouse button to move your right leg. If you want to use your arm, you have to middle click to switch to arm mode.
How do you middle click if you don't have a middle clicker?
I think there's a button on the keyboard that also works.
All right.
Like space or something. So you press a button, essentially, to switch to arm mode. Then, moving your mouse left and right strafes your arm. Moving it up and down moves it in the Z space, like forward and back. And then, I believe, left clicking and dragging moves it on the Y axis, up and down.
Good God.
It is very frustrating. And I could not hang with it. I could
can't
not
even
hang.
play games doing WASD. Like, I can't even handle that.
And we haven't mentioned this yet, but this is intentionally awkward controls,
right?
Which is
that's the point.
That's the point. And that's actually a tag on Steam, intentionally frustrating controls or something like that. Here, let me look this up. Steam.
You're getting over it. Your QWOPs, your games like that.
Exactly.
I Am Bread.
Intentionally awkward controls is a tag on Steam. Exactly. I Am Bread. Fish Hero, Penguin Heist, a lot of these games I haven't even heard of. Surgeon Simulator is one I've played. And so this came out sort of earlier in the indie game timeline, right? So this was a very novel idea back in the day. I had never played it. I don't think you had ever played it before. Here we are in 2025 playing it for the first time. We played co-op on Twitch. We played it all in one sitting. And DiscoCola, after playing through, what are your thoughts on Octodad Dadliest Catch?
Well, overall, I had a pretty good time. So I'm going to tell you what contributed to that and what maybe took me out of the experience. Up first, like ibb obb, the simplicity is its strong suit. The game knows what it is, and it's a complicated movement simulator. And it remains disciplined in its tasks and design to kind of keep that front and center. You're never going through too many miscellaneous extra things to get from point A to point B. point A to point B is the task. That's the goal. That's the challenge. Progression, I think, feels pretty natural as you finish a small set of tasks, particularly in the aquarium. You're then spit out of an exit near the next location for your next set of tasks.
Yeah.
And I don't think it necessarily says which order you have to do these things in. I didn't test that, but
It's pretty open-ended. This game's constantly pushing you along, shoving you along, ready to show you the next thing. Time to do the next thing, the next thing.
right. But it's like a guided tour, and it doesn't handhold to the extent that like the Gen 7 Pokemon games do, because that's pretty like dialogue heavy and automatically points your character in a certain direction. This, like, it respects your intelligence, it spits you out, and you can see the door to the next place. So you have a pretty clear idea of where to go. I like how silly some of the tasks are. Like climbing on the playground to get our son is a bit of a laugh. I also like how mundane some of these tasks are. Like we have to get a frozen pizza, but the doors are frozen shut. It's like,
Oh, yeah.
it's this mundane task, but it's made silly by circumstances of environment or by cephalopodiness, by just being an octopus. So even the mundane things get kind of fun and silly.
Yeah, none of the levels, I mean, there are wild things that happen in the levels, but they're all set in very logical places, in many cases, everyday places. But what you're doing, by having tentacles, it is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the fish out of water sort of thing.
I can't believe you. I think playing with a friend is definitely the optimal way to play. I think the comedic aspects are only amplified by playing with someone else. And all the strange, funny, and odd moments were better with you. So I appreciate that I got to play with you. I also, one of the funnest points of the game was like pinpointing references to other indie games with my indie game podcast co-hosts. That was a fun part of the game.
We had our magnifying glasses up, and we were looking, and there's some fun stuff. There's we saw Commander Video. Oh gosh, I feel like there were some others.
There was a reference to Quap. There was a reference to the Stanley Parable.
That's right. All within kind of the same area.
Yeah. So that was really fun to just like pay a little bit closer attention to the posters. It's like, what are the indie experts ? TM notice in here.
Yeah. And this is over a decade ago. Like they were doing this really fun thing that we're still seeing today.
Yeah, I love it. The writing in the game is pretty minimal, but it is comedy writing. And as comedy media gets older, it often risks aging very poorly, but I don't think this one aged too poorly. In part because there is so little of it, but also most of the jokes kind of come from just like hiding parts of yourself from family. You know, maybe not everyone relates to that, but it is a timeless concept and it will remain timeless for a long time to come.
Yeah. A lot of the comedy also happens in the side conversations with NPCs. You know, you'll just hear people say things, make little side comments about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I was chuckling a lot at that stuff.
Yeah, like the marine biologists just talking to each other too, like, you know, coworker, you know, spats.
Yep.
And I think my absolute favorite thing, and it's a very super small thing, but it really softened the most difficult point of the game for me. My favorite thing from Octodad Dadliest Catch is the line, "Run like a pony, Dad!" I loved that moment. That is the only part I did go back to, just to make sure I got I wasn't sure if it was run like a pony or jump like a pony.
Yeah.
But I went back to it, and my kids were crawling on my lap and watching Octopus again. So
amazing.
I got to watch that part with my kids over and over. As far as things that I don't love about Octodad, I don't like the escalator sections. They felt really hard in a way that was totally different from every other challenge in the game. So I really disliked the escalators.
Yeah, this is when we're in part of the aquarium. We're with Stacy, and we have to get up a series of escalators that get more challenging. And we're having to go in a rhythm. But I feel like even when we were in a rhythm, it wasn't working out, was it?
Yeah, it was rough because, you know, because you can only control one foot at a time, your controlled foot has to plant, you know, solid before the next one can even move. So not only is your co-op partner trying to input that move, just trying to get it ready to go,
Right.
prime the pump, but you're not necessarily planting when you think you're planting your foot because it's a moving staircase. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
And I was spamming my button because
I was too.
I was just spamming it in the hope that I hit it in the right window after you were done moving your leg.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just a hard thing that is so much harder than anything else in the game, in my opinion.
And I'm only pressing one trigger and moving one stick. If I was playing single player, I imagine if I don't get the rhythm right, both my fingers might get tired.
Yeah, that could be the case, man. Another thing, and maybe my least favorite thing, is that by default, in the default settings, I don't think the audio mixing is very good at all.
Oh.
The focus of the game is on controls, like that's the point. But I lost a lot of the dad part of Octodad because I couldn't hear what a lot of people were saying, and all of the subtitles of what people were saying were at the top of the screen, which is not where my attention is.
That is odd that sometimes it's up there because we're so used to reading down in the bottom third.
Right. And so like I missed so much of what was going on, and I didn't really get to pick up on it until I watched Octopus on YouTube with my kids.
Yeah. Inversely, I feel like there were times where side audio cues were way too loud for what they were. Like we were standing in line for something and someone at the front of the line was saying something, but it's like they were yelling, and we shouldn't hear them that loudly probably. So I guess that did help us hear it, but it didn't seem very mixed well. Yeah.
And then just kind of going off of that a little bit more, I just wish more of the story was like mandatory, because I found that the most impactful moments, potentially dialogue pieces, were in the aquarium with Scarlet. But again, I'm missing most of it because I can't hear it and I can't read what she's saying. But it's also like providing the most depth for our characters, in my opinion, in those moments.
Yeah, she wants to have some real talk.
Yeah.
For a moment. And you can easily walk away and miss it. And she'll just keep going on while you're moving away.
And I'm missing it. So I don't know, like, I can tell from level 1 that our marriage is, not perfect. But when those moments come up later in the game, I just, like I said, I missed it. And I needed a little bit more of that. And a lot of that could have been, mandatory cutscenes. That could have.
Yeah, sure. Even just 10 or 15 seconds sometimes can go a long way. Yeah.
So mostly though, I don't know how long this game will stick with me. I don't necessarily wish the game was longer, but I wish there was a little bit more to chew on, and maybe you get more in those other stories that you were talking about.
Yeah, I got more in that first date level than a lot of the base game levels.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's worth playing actually.
Because as it stands for me, it's like I went to go get a fast food burger, right? And I can smell it through the drive-thru, and the picture on the menu, it looks incredible. But then when I get it, it's like flatter than a hockey puck. Like it still smells good and it still tastes good.
Sure.
But I'm like done with it in 4 overly ketchuped bites. And that's kind of how I feel with Octodad. I just want a little bit more, a thicker bun, please.
Mm-hmm. I hear you on that.
But in the end, I don't have many complaints really, but I don't know. I kind of wish I did have more complaints, because as it stands, it was a fun game that I played with some good laughs and with a great friend, but I didn't have too much of a hard time with the hard controls game Octodad Dadliest Catch. And I don't necessarily know that I want it to be harder either, but that lack of a certain challenge kind of makes this a breezier experience, potentially to a detriment.
Okay.
Though again, I did still have fun all the same. So for me and all those reasons, this is, and again, we're going to bring in the scale of numbers here. This is a high 7.5 for me.
What nice. Cool. That's about where I expected you to land on it. Yeah, I'm of two minds with it too, because you could see it as well, it could be harder, which would make it maybe more rewarding to surmount the challenge. But also, I'm super glad that we were able to finish this in one sitting.
We
and
had, we
I
had a
had
hard
fun.
time planning that one sitting
I know.
as it stands.
I know. So I'm thankful we finished it in one sitting, and I still had fun in that sitting. And so as I go into my thoughts, I just want to say I love the slick and clean presentation in this game. I love the intro cutscene with the Octodad song. I think immediately this game has personality.
Yeah.
You see Octodad falling in the air. He's colliding with the words of the credits in really fun ways. You can actually control him. We love an interactive credits at the end of a game. We also, it turns out, we love an interactive credits at the beginning of the game. Let's go.
Yeah, let's throw it back to like old movies. Credits at the beginning, baby.
Yeah. So that sort of felt like a throwback. It almost, you talked about the idyllic suburban day or whatever you said,
I said contentment.
Contentment. This almost feels like an homage to the quiet suburban life of the 1950s, 1960s, or something
absolutely.
like that.
Well, and with the hairstyles of our characters,
right.
of course.
And so there's something classic about it, and I think that maybe that time period specifically isn't intentional all the way through. Maybe it does end up being a little bit more modern in the technology they use and the places they go, but there's something a little classic, a little timeless that's preserved throughout. I love the clear-cut instructions and the objectives. They make sense. They're very easy to understand. I did catch myself not reading them a few times, and that's on me, but they update, and it's very clear about what you're supposed to do. This game is never vague. I love the experience of playing two-player in Octodad. After playing single-player and co-op, I can very safely say that I think the two-player experience is superior. And that was not on my bingo card.
Yeah.
I fully expected co-op Octodad to be so unintuitive.
Chaotic. Yeah.
So chaotic and unintuitive that I would prefer playing it single player, not because I don't like playing with you, but just because with this game and this co-op mode in this game, it just doesn't work out as well. And wow, that's a huge surprise, is that it actually ended up being quite easy.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we do this unspoken cooperation where I notice that you move your leg, so I move my leg. And we get into a rhythm with the movement. And after we do it enough times and enough levels, we know what that feels like. And so when I feel you starting to get into that rhythm of movement, I know what you're doing, and I start doing it too. And I think in some ways that is easier than pulling both triggers yourself with a controller. I love that there's a balance of jank and snappiness, right? Because the movement is chaotic at a certain point, but interacting with objects is snappy. You will pick up a key item, you'll bring it to its spot, like let's say the burgers that you grill at home. You just set them on the grill. You don't have to orient them a certain way. When you pick them up after they're cooked, you just place them on the bun and they magnetize to the bun.
Yeah,
that happens all over.
There is a comfy, window of error there.
And I'm so thankful for that. I
No,
love that.
No kidding.
I love that we don't have to like precisely pixel by pixel arrange it so that it's just right. It just knows and it snaps. And that's really all the game needs to be. It doesn't need to be this precision. It's more about the idea of, did you pick up the burger and did you grill it? Yes, you did. Then you picked it up and put it toward the bun. We'll do the rest.
Walk from point A to point B while holding the thing.
Yeah, exactly. I love the heartfelt themes and the story too. I think this is another surprise of the game. Octodad represents this uneasiness that we might feel like we don't belong. I, like Octodad, have so many days where I feel like I'm speaking a different language than everyone else. It feels like I can't say the right thing, or people aren't listening to me, or I just don't know how to communicate in a way that is synonymous with how other people are communicating that day. And I think that's kind of what he's going through. I think this could also represent the immigrant experience. I can't speak from my own experience, but Octodad is an immigrant in a way. And I think some people might see that side of a story. There's also the parental experience And I'll be curious to hear about, more of those moments like run like a pony, Dad. Like what other moments stood out to you as things that reminded you of your kids, for instance. And I just think it's whatever Octodad might mean to you as the player. Everyone will get something out of this story, I think. And for a really goofy game about wacky physics, I think that's pretty extraordinary and probably above and beyond for something like this. I didn't really like that the level distribution felt a bit uneven with so much of it focused on the aquarium. So the first few levels, we have our wedding, we have the day at home, and then we go to the grocery store. And all of those are pretty short. And then we spend so much time at the aquarium. And I get that that's where a lot of the most important moments happen. But it just feels like this game leans so far on the aquarium side that I would have wanted more everyday situations.
So I'm thinking of Tommy's level in the aquarium that could have just as easily been literally any playground ever and not an aquarium. Like you could have gone to the park with the kids.
We could have been at the park and then we could have seen other kids. We could have had a street with traffic going on. We could have had, oh, honey, could you go get the kids ice cream across the street? Stuff like that.
Maybe sand complicates your movement by walking in sand.
Totally. And that's an opportunity to just see more outdoor exterior locations. Also, there were a few times where limbs got stuck inside of surfaces.
Oh, yeah, that was rough.
That was unfortunate.
It was not frequent, but we did have to quit to menu one time, I think.
Just a couple times where this happened. And sometimes you can get yourself unstuck, but on that playground, on the jungle gym thing, my leg got stuck in the bridge and we couldn't get it unstuck. Also, there are a few sections that are disproportionately frustrating. I'm thinking of times like the escalators. Overall, though, Octodad was more touching than I expected, and perhaps more than it had any right to be. It is a co-op experience where the co-op was superior to the single player for me in this case. I don't think this is a game that is terribly deep or profound, but there are some heartwarming moments. There are some themes that go a little bit deeper than you might expect. So I'm going to rate this an 8 out of 10.
That's what I guessed.
Really?
Yeah,
Amazing.
I'm on top
You're
of it
on
today.
top of it, yeah.
I am reading you like a book, Bopo.
I thought about maybe a 7.5, but I'm going up to an 8. I'm going up to an 8 because I had a great time with you, and I think this is just a pleasant time. It's not one that I'll think back to a ton. I think that's part of what's informing my 8 out of 10 and not like a 9 out of 10.
That's kind of where mine is too.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on how we actually got the co-op working because this required homework. This required some testing.
You did all that homework. I helped with some testing, but you knocked it out. So that's all you. Baby.
I really just did a search on the internet of how do you get this up and running, and I found a forum somewhere.
That's more than I usually do. I'm usually just like, I'll just buy the game. We'll both figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I knew that this didn't have the traditional online co-op option on PlayStation. You can't own the game and have someone else own the game and just join an online session. You have to do PlayStation Share Play. You have to join a party. And we did this. We did a test before our stream where we made a PlayStation party, and then I had to start up the game, and then I used PlayStation Share Play, I think is what it's called, inside of the party's menu. You have to be in my party. I choose you, cast my game to you, and allow you control. And then we have the ability to assign legs and arms to each other. And so we went with, you were the left side, I was the right side of the body.
Yeah. So we hadn't mentioned that until now, but I was the entire left half.
Yeah. And there's an option to randomize the assignments between levels, and that was on by default.
That's on by default, and that was so confusing and annoying.
We thought it wasn't working.
Yeah, we thought it was glitching, because I was like also experiencing some like really low resolution because of my internet settings. It was a confusing start, but we got there.
And so whenever we reach a new save point, it would randomly assign the arms and legs. And we'd be like, what happened? Are you disconnecting?
Yeah, there
What's
would be
going on?
times where it would just be all Bopo.
Yeah.
And
I'm like,
that would be
okay.
the randomization.
And I thought I lost you. I thought you just disconnected from the internet. And then we go back into that menu for the fourth time and we notice, oh, there's an option that says randomize limbs after each level.
That's a fun concept, but that's more of a like, I would only do that if you were in the same room.
Totally. And maybe on a second playthrough. I don't know about the first playthrough. So if we wanted a harder time, that's definitely the way to go, because I would totally forget which limbs I had every level.
So I think about the timeline of indie games, right? And I often throw it to Limbo, Meat Boy, Castle Crash, just all of those PS3 ones that we have played relatively recently here on Underplayed. But for me, Octodad, Dadliest Catch is kind of like one of the first in the second era. And indie games have been around forever.
Sure.
You know, my first era, second era is not accurate. But this is like the first one in the second era, you
Totally.
know, big air quotes for me. And so I'm just curious, like, in your opinion, after looking at Limbo and Meat Boy and Castle Crashers, talking about what holds up, what doesn't, what do you think holds up with Octodad by today's standards and what doesn't?
Well, this is definitely a more lighthearted comedic game with some real themes sprinkled throughout. But I would call this, more of a comedy game than Limbo.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're comparing it to those earlier games, I think of Castle Crashers, which is a goofy game too. And I think the comedy, the humor in this is a more timeless, like you pointed out.
Right.
And then the presentation, I think, holds up. The introduction of the game, the introduction of the levels is, again, really smooth. And I think that's something that won't go away with time. I think that will always be something that holds up with this game because they just wanted to make it clean. And it's just, it works. When I think of other intentionally awkward controls games I've played, I think of, I've tried I Am Bread. Wow, I gave up on that pretty fast. I've also tried getting over it with Bennett Foddy. And I think what is nice about Octodad is that it is much more approachable than I would have expected.
Mm-hmm.
I had never played it before. Neither of us had. So I just didn't know what to expect. And it was not too bad.
Yeah.
I think you can get into a groove with it.
For me, I think controlling it gameplay-wise, it does feel more, if the Awkward's control games had a classic, it feels more like a classic. It feels more natural to control because of the approachability, like you mentioned. I can't imagine something like Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy coming out quite as early. I think they're pretty close together in age, but I don't think it came out quite as early as Octodad.
Oh yeah, Getting Over It.
Let's fact check me real quick.
2017.
Okay.
So a few years after.
Yeah. For me, though, things that don't really feel like they hold up is, and part of this is because of the hairstyles and perceived time period. There's a lot about this game that reminds me of Destroy All Humans.
Oh.
But part of that is also because of kind of how some of the levels feel a little bit more naked than they need to be. Like I could go with more junk in the grocery store.
Totally.
Like there is a lot of stuff to trip over in there, but
let's have a pyramid of soda boxes, that
Right.
make a collage.
yeah, it's
and
just
maybe
like
we can knock those over.
it's just like two aisles and a small little produce, almost like a closet,
Yeah.
basically. Like I could have the place feel a little bit more lived in.
Yeah. Adding to that, which might contribute to the classic feel, did you also notice that the game feels like it's a little bit desaturated, or like maybe it just doesn't have as much brightness in its color?
Yeah,
going on?
there is something with color. I'm not good at recognizing color or color theory or things like that. So I'm going to lean a little bit more on you for that, but there is something, there's like outlines in some places and other places things kind of just blend in with the background. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I just think that there could be more contrast. There could be more saturation to the world. I think it could feel a little bit livelier through colors that pop. But maybe that's trying to evoke more of a classic feel too. So yeah, it's not like it's an ugly game. I think it's actually a nice looking game. But yeah, as far as what doesn't hold up, I mean, you pointed out some things with the sound mixing. You know, I feel like good sound mixing is something we might take for granted in a lot of games, because that seems like it would be hard, especially in a 3D game where you've got side characters, many of whom utter things as you're walking by. There's a lot of measurements you need to do to get that right.
Yeah. For me, I didn't think of that as something that didn't hold up, because I still experience bad sound mixing in games, even in our modern era. But it is something that stood out to me for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you want to go area by area and talk about moments from the different chapters, or do you want to just highlight a few favorites? What do you want to do here when we look at the whole list of areas?
Well, I appreciated the game the most in the grocery store, just because there were environmental challenges, there were climbing challenges, and it was the only time in the game where I felt challenged by the suspicion meter, because through a large amount of the game, I didn't feel like we were struggling with that, except for the marine biologist, which can basically one-shot you.
Yeah, it does feel like a mysterious mechanic. It makes me think of the insanity meter in Amnesia: The Dark Descent, where it's this entire mechanic presented to you and always in front of you, but you never have a grasp of how close are you to danger? How close are you to failure? And so it's just this thing you live with, and it wasn't a problem most of the time.
Yeah.
And so that was another way the game was a little bit more approachable for us.
Yeah. As far as moments that stand out, there were a couple of times where jank really worked in our favor. I think in the playground, we managed to accidentally climb up 2 ladders.
Yeah.
And then there was one moment in the final section of the aquarium where there is a fire, I'll say.
Right.
We bugged out into a second checkpoint, even though we didn't actually reach it, which I was not opposed. I was pretty pleased with that.
I actually have a theory about this, because I went back to get the trophy where Scarlet plugs the 3 things herself.
Oh, there's a trophy for that?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So we almost got it ourselves
We
the first
did.
time. And I had to play that section to get there. And playing in single player, I was falling a lot, and then it respawned me in that spot. So I think it is intentional.
Intentional, after you fail a
After
few
you
times.
fail maybe 4 or 5 times, I think it's going to put you on that other side to give you an easier time.
I wondered about that.
Yeah.
I was hoping that it was more of a oh, we found the secret spot. But
yeah.
I did wonder about that.
I did appreciate that, though, that I didn't have to do all that careful stepping above the fire, because that was
Add band name Careful Stepping.
careful stepping, careful fire stepping. Yeah, I also really like the arcade area where we're just playing a couple of mini games really quickly to get all the toys that we need.
I love a mini game room. Dragon Shores and Spyro 2 was a great reward for completing a game.
And we were taking turns with those too.
Yeah.
I would mainly control one, you would mainly control one. And then we end up using the animals we get to plug the holes,
Yeah.
I think, which, that it pays off. That's a really fun idea. When you were talking about Gervison's Grocery, that reminded me that I think that level is just firing on all cylinders, probably my single favorite area of the game. But you were talking about wanting it to be more full of objects. And I actually think the Wedding Bells segment, the opening segment, has lots of stuff.
Maybe that's why, I think, because it's not the next level, but it's the one after that. And it's just I was digging around in this, chest full of crap to find my wedding ring.
Right. And there were present boxes stacked in front of the doors, and we're knocking those over. We're destroying the stained glass window to get our bow tie. There's the room right next to where we get our tux, and there are lots of tables and objects in there. We can knock over tons of stuff down the aisle leading to Scarlet's. So yeah, really fun stuff. I didn't look for them always, but I appreciated that there were the ties that we could find in the game. There's a collectible in here. And I did manage to find an extra one as I was going back to get the trophy with Scarlet.
I think
throwing the balls.
if we hadn't been so pressed for time and scheduling conflicts, I would not have minded looking for those.
That would have been, if we had to make it into 2 streams, that would have been the focus of the second one for sure. And now I want to hear from you about any relatable moments with you being a dad. Since this is about an Octodad, we do have 2 kids in this game, and you have 2 kids yourself. So what moments stood out to you from a parental perspective?
So there are a lot of parallels between Stacy and Tommy and my children. I'm thinking specifically of like 3 moments. One is in the playground where we're trying to get to Tommy, and then we're like almost to the top, but not quite. And Tommy just bolts to the next thing. He's just like, "See you, Dad. You're almost there." He's just like off. I'm just like, "Ugh, can you just like
I'll never
slow
catch up to
down
this
for
kid."
a minute?" Another moment is with Tommy again, and he has to be tied down. And I can relate to that in a lot of ways because one of my children will run off, escape, avoid you when you obviously need them to sit still, while the other child is always just like pleasant and relaxed and will come when you call, that kind of thing.
They complement each other very well, don't they?
I could deal with just like 2 of the same. That would be fine. But then also with Stacy, there's moments where she is just like really observant. She understands things that not everyone else is picking up on. Every once in a while, it's like, I didn't know that you were paying attention.
Yeah. There's a great moment with Stacy in the aquarium, just where she holds up her hand. There are moments that kind of got to me. And again, I just think it's a really kind of surprising game when it comes to some of its emotions. And this was my pick for our co-op game for the season. And I just want to thank you for being open-minded about it.
I wanted to play it.
It is, yeah. I did too. It's one of those classic indies that I feel like was good to check off the list and have that feather in our cap, and a different kind of co-op experience than one we've had before, I think too. Well, we will end it there unless you have anything else to share.
I don't think so.
Cool. All right. Well, that is our review of Octodad Dadliest Catch, the last featured game of season 7.
Have you been taking a look? Do you know what you're picking next episode? I think I have one. I have one that I'm ready.
Well, we're going to have several guests, and they will pick. I'm kind of waiting for them to pick their games before I
don't
pounce.
think this one's going to be picked from a guest. But
okay.
I've got one. I was thinking about it, I think yesterday in the car or something. I was like, I think that one. I think that's the one.
Interesting. Okay, I'm curious about that one. I do have one that there's a chance a guest would want to play. It's kind of a big one that I've wanted us to play for a while. So we'll see if that one gets picked. Otherwise, I'm kind of playing the waiting game. I'll see what the guests pick. We're going to have a few more guests than we've had before. So we've got to figure that stuff out.
I've barely looked at the list. I don't think about it until it's actually time. I barely look at the list.
That's so interesting.
Time,
I look at the list all the time.
Yeah, I see that there's like 2 more on here since I last looked, which was not that long ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm adding ideas to it, but also I just browse the lists that are already vetted because I'm like, ooh, what's on here again? Oh, yeah. And I just like imagining playing them, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah.
But you can play, anyway, back to Octodad. you can play it on, get ready for this list, PC, Mac, Linux, Wii U, Switch, PS4, PlayStation Vita, Xbox One, iOS, and Android. DiscoCola rated it a 7.5. I rated it an 8. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast platforms such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Oni Mochi. Check out our show notes where you can find and follow us across social media. Underplayed is on Bluesky, Instagram, and Threads. You can also find my links down there, and I stream a variety of indie games on Twitch.
And you can find me in a lot of those same places, mostly at Bluesky. And you can find Underplayed also on Twitch, where we play this game in one sitting, and we do early premieres of all of our episodes on the Monday nights before they premiere. But after that, we'll be dormant for about a month while we get ready for Season 8.
Yes. And next time we'll be reflecting on all the games of Season 7, and we'll be planning our featured game roster for Season 8. It'll be a great time. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.